Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we're going to do a very special episode covering the Eldar Legends. So what are Legends, you might ask? So Legends are units that were once produced by Forge World, but sadly are no longer in production. However, GW still gives them rules so that players that did buy the models can still use them in casual games. Legend units unfortunately cannot be used in any kind of competitive play, whether it be matched play in, your local game store or tournaments. So basically because of this, they happen to kind of fall by the wayside and aren't really talked about a lot on YouTube. And actually, I was very surprised to find that this is the first video on YouTube covering the Eldar Legends units in 10th edition. Which is kind of a shame, really, because a lot of players did pick up these units when they were in production, and I have to say they are super cool. The data sheets are pretty strong overall. There's a couple of stinkers in there, obviously, but for the most part, they're very usable in regular games. So what we're going to do today is bring some light to those units, and for all those players out there who bought these ages ago and still love to play them in games, this one's for you. And without further ado, let's get right into it. But first, just a quick overview of today's video. We're just going to be taking a look at the Eldar Legends datasheets and analyzing them. And we're going to talk about whether or not it's worth it to use Legends units in your games. So the first up is the Phoenix. And the Phoenix is a slightly tougher flyer. It gets +1 to hit against units without fly, making it effective against ground targets. It has the Phoenix Missile Array and Phoenix Pulse Laser, which are good against medium to heavy infantry, as is the Shuriken Cannon. The Pulse Laser can also threaten lighter vehicles as well, being, strength 9. And having D6 damage doesn't hurt either. It is tougher than regular flyers with toughness 9 and 16 wounds. Most of our flyers are toughness 8 and don't have as many wounds. However, the Phoenix does not have an invul save, which I thought was kind of weird because it's the Phoenix. You would think it would have some sort of durability boost or invul or something. However, here's the thing. It's only 175 points, so it's actually a fairly cheap flyer. It's only slightly more expensive than the Crimson Hunter, and I actually think it's better. Yes, it does have to start in reserve, but it's a unit that can really easily take out heavy infantry, which the Crimson Hunter struggles to do. Yes, the Crimson Hunter is good against tanks, but we already have so many anti-tank options in our lists. And the Phoenix is a decent choice if you want a flyer that can take out infantry. However, it is still a flyer. Flyers are not that good in general, but I think this is actually slightly better than the Crimson Hunter, weirdly enough. The next unit on the list is the Vampire Raider, which is kind of like a flyer, but a super heavy flyer. It comes in at 430 points, which is a massive points cost. It does come with 2 twin pulse lasers, which are good at tackling light vehicles and monsters and heavy infantry. It has toughness 12, 30 wounds, and a 2+ save, and a 4+ invul against range attacks, which make it incredibly tough for a flyer, but just keep in mind, it is 430 points, and it's not tough compared to other stuff that's 430 points. So if you compare it to things like the Cobra or something like that, it is going to be less tough than that. However, this thing is also a transport. It transports 30 models, rates count as 2, and models disembarking before it moves can advance and still charge. So this is really good for slow-moving units like Wraith Blades. So you can put a bunch of Wraith Blades in there, and they can disembark, advance, and then still charge, which is really cool. Yeah, it's 430 points, and it's not competitively priced, but hey, it's fun. And you can charge units out of it and still advance, which I think is really cool. So Harlequins can do it, basically anything. You can have 30 Harlequins in this thing, and they can all advance and charge, which is just insane to me. So even though it doesn't have the best damage or anything like that for its cost, it's really funny, especially since it can, do that ability where units disembarking from it can actually charge and advance. So really cool model, really cool rules, just not competitively costed. Oh yeah, and one more thing, it can hover. So that means you can start on the board with it unlike other flyers. So it's actually a viable pick if it survives the first turn. Because again, you can disembark 3 inches and you can actually advance and charge out of it. Alright, so on to the Corsair Cloud Dancer band. So they're jet bike Corsairs essentially, and they're really cool because they have movement 14, toughness 4, 2 wounds each, just like regular jet bikes. And they have a 3+ save. In addition, they have Scout 7 and can use Heroic Intervention for free. The Heroic Intervention is completely garbage. You're never going to want to use that on this unit. It's just really a bad idea. So please, dear God, never use this ability unless there's like some sort of bizarro occurrence where maybe heroically intervening would win you the game on an objective or something. If not, stay away from it. However, here's why the unit's actually good. I know that ability sucks, but they can all be armed with either Dark Eldar or Eldar heavy weapons. And one of those weapons is the Dark Lance. So you can take a unit of 7 of these guys max. So they basically come in units of 3 or 4 or 6 or 7. And you can have 7 Dark Lances in the unit. These guys are basically 2 Ravagers combined. And weirdly enough, they're around the same cost. Now, you do need to buff them with things like Guide because they still hit on a 3+. They don't have any innate rerolls or anything like that. But, I mean, hey, you have Unparalleled Mastery, which is 1 reroll. And, you know, just if you want some insurance, you can always throw Guide on them. So that's 7 Dark Lances being able to reroll hits. Now, that's not the only thing. They also come with a unique weapon called the Dissonance Cannon, which is basically a shirking cannon, but with devastating wounds. So if you don't want to deal with tanks with this squad and you want to deal with infantry, you can pick up the Dissonance Cannons, and these guys wreck heavy infantry, especially things with a 2+ save and an invul. They are extremely powerful, which is probably why they're 35 points a model. Their ability really sucks. The Heroic Intervention with a shooting unit is laughable, but the fact that they can take Dark Lances and these special weapons called Dissonance Cannons make up for it tenfold. Okay, so moving on to the next unit, we have the Vampire Hunter. So the Vampire Hunter is kind of like the Vampire Raider, except instead of a transport, it's a heavy destroyer. So its targets are mainly going to be vehicles and monsters, and as a result, it rerolls damage rolls of 1 against monsters and vehicles, which is okay, but considering it's 450 points, it's not that great. It does come with twin pulse lasers and also a twin vampire pulsar, which has increased strength, AP, and a flat damage of 4, which doesn't really synergize that well with the whole rerolls, damage rolls of 1 thing. And basically, other than that, it has the exact same stats as the Vampire Raider. So, 30 wounds, 4+ invul save against shooting, 3+ save, and yeah, toughness 12, and that's about it. This is one of those Legends units that is a bit of a stinker, unfortunately. It just doesn't really do anything that the army can't already do, and its special ability is a little bit on the weak side and anti-synergistic with its main weapon, which is the Vampire Pulsar. So, unfortunately, just not a good model. If you have it, though, definitely play it. It's really cool, but it kind of sucks. Okay, so moving on to a unit that doesn't suck, the Bone Singer. It only costs 45 points, and it's basically a Wraith and vehicle support unit. It gives a Wraith unit it joins a 6+ Feel No Pain, which, by no means the greatest thing ever, is pretty decent for only 45 points. Also, it counts as a lone operative when within 3 of a Wraith unit or Eldar vehicle, which means if its bodyguard dies and the Bone Singer magically survives somehow, which isn't out of the realm of possibility considering it's going to be joined to toughness 7 units that are probably pretty tough to kill as is, it becomes a lone operative and can no longer be shot at outside of 12 inches. So that's pretty cool. In your command phase, it also allows a Wraith Constructor vehicle within 3 inches to regain D3 lost wounds, and this is great on the Wraith Lord. I actually think this guy is a great attachment to the Wraith Lord, because not only does it give it a 6+ Feel No Pain, but it also regains lost wounds on the Wraith Lord, which is really awesome. This is something that the Spirit Seer cannot do, right? The Spirit Seer revives Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades that it's attached to, but cannot revive the Wraith Lord. So, the Bone Singer actually can regain wounds on the Wraith Lord. But the cool thing is it also works with things like the Wraith Knight and Eldar vehicles as well. So if you do need a vehicle to be a little bit tougher for the next turn, maybe it's taken some damage or maybe it's at -1 to hit, it's within that range, a Bone Singer can definitely fix it right up. And yeah, overall, I think the Bone Singer is really cool. It's cheap in points, it supports Wraiths well, and it's a really cool model. What else can I say? Alright, so on to the Wasp Assault Walker. The Wasp Assault Walker has the exact same stats as the War Walker. except instead of Scout, it has Deep Strike as well as Fly. Just like the Warwalker, it carries 2 Eldar heavy weapons. However, instead of the -1 to wound, it has the ability to always advance the full 6 inches. So in other words, it's just a faster alternative to the Warwalker for the exact same cost. However, I do think it is slightly worse than the Warwalker due to the lack of Scout and extra durability. Yes, Fly allows you to get some different movement options in, but Fly is not so great of a rule right now, especially when trying to move over ruins. It just takes a ton of movement to even get there. Yes, you can fly on top of ruins and get plunging fire, but with the base size of the Warwalker, it's going to be a little bit difficult to do that on most ruins. Not all ruins, but for most top story ruins, it is going to be a little bit difficult. So Wasp Assault Walkers, I think, are really cool. I love the fact that they can deep strike and have fly and things like this, but the rules aren't really as good as just the regular Warwalker. However, that's not why you take them. You take them because they're cool, because they're Legends units, and if you have some, definitely run them because they do just as much damage as Warwalkers. They probably have a little bit higher of a damage ceiling as well because they have fly. So moving on to the next unit, we have the Corsair Skyweaver Band. So this is basically a flying jump pack version of a Corsair. They're 25 points per model, so they're pretty expensive, and they come in units of 5 or 6 or 10 or 11. So they're kind of expensive if you want a big unit of them. 1 per 5 can take an Eldar or Dark Eldar heavy or special weapon, which is really cool. There's a long list here of heavy and special weapons to choose from. But in this current meta, you're probably going to want to take Dark Lances in most cases. They do also have the ability Sky Leap, which works exactly like the Swooping Hawk version, so they can come in and out of reserve. They have movement 14, deep strike, and a brace of pistols as well. However, the brace of pistols sucks. It's basically just extra attacks if they're in close combat, which isn't bad, but you really don't want these guys in close combat. And other than that, they're basically Swooping Hawks, but with different weapon options. And way more expensive. So they're like the Swooping Hawks of last edition cost-wise with the rules of the Swooping Hawks this edition as far as their special ability. Now here's the thing a lot of people have been mentioning in my comments over and over and over again. They have, apparently, 3 wounds. I do think this is a typo because there is no way an Eldar model that's not a Wraith unit is going to have 3 wounds on its profile. I just don't believe it. So yeah, as of now, rules as written, they have 3 wounds apiece. So they're pretty damn tough. But I don't think it's really intended. And many of you might say, well, it's on the datasheet, I'm going to use it. And that's fine. They're not that great. They're not the best unit out there. They are pretty expensive. But it's clearly one of those typo things. It was kind of like when the Wave Serpent had 4 shots for its twin-linked star cannon. It's clearly a typo, but it is technically rules as written, to have 3 wounds. So you just have to use your best judgment with that one. Just tread lightly. And yeah, other than that, I think they're a really cool unit. I think they look really awesome. Even though they're not really priced competitively, I think they have some pretty cool special rules and stuff going on. So if you have the unit, definitely think of using it. It's a really cool one. All right, so next up we have probably my favorite unit in the entire Legends roster, and that is the Firestorm Grav tank. So the Firestorm is bordering on busted, and I'm talking about if this thing was an index unit, it would have been nerfed already. Let's take a look at it. It's only 115 points. It has a 16-shot scatter laser with anti-fly 2+. Now, that may not seem like that big of a deal in and of itself, right? Yeah, it's great against flying units and maybe some horde-style infantry, but that's about it, right? And yeah, 115 points for something that's anti-horde, well, it's not that big of a deal, right? I can get Swooping Hawks for that cost. I can get, scatter lasers other places for that cost. It's not that big of a deal. But check this out. When you consider this in combination with the stratagem Blade Storm, you're suddenly realizing that every single critical wound you score is going to be at -2 AP. And because anti-fly 2+ means that every 2+ is automatically a critical hit, that means that Blade Storm, ladies and gentlemen, is always going to proc on wound. This thing gets 16 attacks at strength 5. if it's hitting something with fly, every single shot that wounds is going to be doing -2 AP. So that's absolutely insane against any target with fly. Basically, if the unit has fly and it's targeted with this thing, it's going to die. And there's really nothing they can do about it. Custode Bikers, dead. Other Eldar Grav tanks, dead. Dark Eldar tanks, Raiders and Venoms and Ravagers Oh My, dead. Necron vehicles, dead. Anything with fly, dead. This thing kills everything with Bladestorm. Seriously. Especially if you throw Guide on it. So its one weakness is that it hits on a 3+ and you might scuff that, right? It has so many attacks, maybe you roll bad. Well, if you put Guide on it, who cares? You throw Guide on this thing and it just basically destroys anything it wants. With fly, of course. However, that's not all. It also has an ability that when it overwatches a unit with fly, it can target up to 3 additional units with fly within 24 inches, so the range of Overwatch. Just think about the potential with Guide. If your opponent has a list that relies on fast flying units to get to places in the center of the board quickly to maybe score on objectives and stuff like that, or try to flank around you and control the board, they're going to get punished hard for it. And you can do this to 3 additional units, regardless if they've moved or not. So the moment your opponent starts a move with a model, that's it. You're going to overwatch against that target plus 3 other targets with fly. And that's insane. It is a really great tank. Yeah, you're hitting on 6s with that overwatch, but again, with Guide, you're re-rolling it. And then during your turn, you're basically dumping a bunch of Bladestorm hits on opponents as well. So if your opponent has a lot of units with fly, this thing is just a no-brainer. But even if your opponent doesn't have units with fly, it's still pretty good against light infantry. And over the course of the game, because it's so cheap, it can still make up its points value. This unit is absolutely bonkers. And again, if it was in the index, it would have been nerfed by now, for sure. Next up, we have a unit that's maybe not so great, but is really cool. And that is Malin's Shadow Guide. So she's a ranger. She's a 75-point lone operative with infiltrate, which is pretty good. She can redeploy 1 unit of rangers or shroud runners and can move D6 when an enemy unit moves within 9 inches of her, just like rangers can. She has a 4+ invul and a power blade, and that's it. Other than that, she does absolutely nothing. She has a regular ranger long rifle. She has no special weapons at all, just regular stuff. And that's Malin for you. For 75 points. So is she competitive? Absolutely not. But she's a cool model. And, you know, if you're running in a Laytalk style list or something like that and you want to include her, I think she'd be a good include for that. She's not that good in comparison with other lone operatives in her index, but, you know, she is still a lone operative, so that means she can't be targeted and things like that, which is powerful in its own right. And lastly, we have the Corsair Reaver band. So these are just like the Skyweavers, except the foot version of them. They can take 1 Eldar or Dark Eldar, heavier special weapon per 5 models, just like the Skyweavers. They can move D6 when an enemy unit moves within 9. So this is kind of cool because this is kind of like the Ranger move that they have. They are primarily a shooting unit, so this will be useful. However, they are a bit squishy with a 5+ armor save. Now, they do also have that typo of wounds 3, but I am certain it's a typo. Still though, if you're using rules as written, they have 3 wounds unfortunately, so there's nothing much you can do against that until this gets changed, and it doesn't look like they're going to give much attention to the Legends units. So these guys actually might be just forever 3 wounds, who knows. However, they are a little bit on the pricey side at 25 points a model, so maybe that makes up for the typo just a little bit. And again, they are a really cool looking unit, and if you do have a unit of these, don't let the typo, stop you from running them. They are a very cool unit, and I definitely think they deserve to see the tabletop. Alright, so now that we've gone over all the Legends units, are they worth using in your games? Absolutely. I have to say, they're super cool, they have a lot of fun and effective rules. The Bone Singer is really awesome, even the Vampire Raider is cool, right? Being able to allow your unit to get out, and also advance and charge. That's really awesome. And then you have the Firestorm, which is like almost broken as far as I'm concerned, right? The combination of that against flying units with Bladestorm can just wipe out even the toughest of flying units, right? So at only 115 points too. And if you thought that was funny, run that thing up with Guide right next to Bellicor and just laugh as you blow them off the table. I seriously think someone has to do the math for me on that one, because I've been just running this over in my head basically for the last couple of days. Can a couple of these things moving up to Bellicor actually kill him, with one of them benefiting from Bladestorm? I don't know. I don't know the exact math on it, but if somebody can do that for me and find out whether they can kill Bellicor for 230 points, please tell me. Because that is something I would absolutely love to know, and it would just crack me up to see this happen on the battlefield. So yeah, Legends units are definitely worth using if you have them. They are pretty hard to get a hold of though. So for any of you new players who are looking to get these, you're probably going to have to find them on eBay or something like that, some kind of third party, website or something, because you can't buy them directly from Forge World anymore, unfortunately. But they are really cool, and if you're an old timer and have these models, definitely use them because they're just loads of fun. So in conclusion, Legend Eldar units were far more awesome than I expected. I really expected them to be garbage tier, because in the past, Legend units have often been terrible, right? They're rarely updated, they have really old rules usually, and they're just not good. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that they're pretty solid and have rules that both make sense in the game and are fun to use. And what more can you ask for, right? Fun units that are also not trash, right? Yeah, they're not the most competitive units out there, but who cares, right? They don't need to be super competitive to be fun and effective on the battlefield, and that's exactly what Legends units are. However, I will make an exception with the Firestorm. I think that thing is absolutely broken as hell. And this is going to sound really bad, but I wanted to use this thing so badly, I actually proxied a Falcon for it. And I asked my Dark Eldar buddy if he'd be willing to play me in a game, just a 1,000-point game, to try out a new Legends unit that I wanted to, give a shot. And I have to tell you guys, I felt really bad about this because I knew it was just going to absolutely wreck his entire army. And, he runs a very raider-heavy army, so he has a lot of raiders and stuff like that. So turn 1 comes around, and he's, moving all of his units. And my turn comes around, and I move my Firestorm out, and I shoot at one of his raiders and blow it up. And his jaw drops because he didn't expect that. And he was like, well, I knew it was anti-fly, but damn, I didn't expect it to be that good. I know you guys are probably going to get mad at me for this. I forgot to tell him about the Overwatch. So he moves all of his raiders forward to try to kill this thing, right? And his gunboats are full of Kabbalite warriors. So he also has, a bunch of anti-infantry. He's going to also shoot at some of my infantry that I took along. But I don't even care about that. At this point, it's just I want the Firestorm to do really well. So I declare my Overwatch against a target, and then I tell him that, unfortunately, I'm going to also be able to Overwatch 3 additional targets with Fly. At this point, he's just like, dude, you're a fucking troll, and go ahead, destroy my entire army. I proceeded with 4 Overwatches to do no damage. I bet you guys weren't expecting that. Yes, I did no fucking damage at all. I think I did a couple of wounds to a raider. Even with Guide, I didn't manage to score many 6s. So, unfortunately, didn't do anything with Overwatch, but it was still funny, and I'm convinced that the Firestorm is still good for its cost. It's only 115 points. I ended up killing a few more things. I think I ended up winning that game, but he did kill the Firestorm after that in the preceding shooting phase. So he did get a little bit of revenge on it, but it is what it is, right? Just thought I'd tell you guys about that. Again, Firestorm, really cool, really awesome unit. If you have one, definitely use it in a game. At the very least, even if you're like me and just whiff on the Overwatch, it's still a fun model. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Thank you to all my patrons and supporters who have supported the channel over the last months. Your help has greatly improved the channel and helped it grow. If you do want to become a Patreon member to support the channel, I have free trials activated, and a free trial will grant you permanent access to our Discord community, which is a community of Eldar players and enthusiasts who like talking about strategy, tactics, and of course, hobbying. I will leave the link in the description for that if you want to join. I also have a channel store page if you're interested in grabbing some Eldar-inspired apparel to rep your local game store. I'll leave the link in the description, as well as the link for my Amazon affiliate page, which, if you're in the market to buy some cheap Eldar models on Amazon, definitely check that out. I think in the US right now, the Combat Patrol is going for around $115. So it's a pretty good deal if you live in the US. I don't know about other countries or other regions, but, you know, check it out. Maybe you'll save some money. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today. Peace out. See you guys next time and have some great games this weekend. Have a good one, everybody. See you later.